He found two alien sisters freezing in the snow. Now both want to be his. Before the snowstorm, the forest had been silent. Not calm, not peaceful. Silent in the wrong way. Birds had stopped singing. No branches cracked. No small animals moved under the trees. It was as if the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for something it did not understand. Then the sky changed. Not in color, but in feeling. The air felt heavier, thicker. The snow that fell was slower, as if time itself had become tired. Far below that strange sky, a single wooden cabin stood in the endless white. Inside that cabin sat John. He did not know the sky had changed. He did not know the forest was afraid. He only knew his fire needed more wood and his coffee tasted bitter. He lived alone and liked it. No traffic, no noise, no past chasing him. Then something happened that had never happened in all his years there. The radio turned on by itself. No music, no voice, just a single sound like breathing made of metal. John frowned and leaned closer. He touched the dial. The sound stopped. The cabin went quiet again. He almost laughed at himself. "Old wires," he said out loud, even though no one was there to hear him. Then someone knocked on the door. Not loud, not weak, 3 slow knocks. Boom, boom, boom. John froze. No one ever came here. No mail, no neighbors, no lost hikers. In winter, even animals stayed away. He stood still for a moment and listened again. Nothing. Only wind. He walked to the door and opened it. No one stood there. Only snow, only wind, only white space. But there were footprints. 2 sets. They did not walk to the cabin. They appeared right at the door as if someone had stepped out of thin air. The prints were light and small, like from 2 thin people. Bare feet. In snow. John stepped outside. The cold bit at his skin, but something else made him forget the weather. A few meters away, half hidden by snow, he saw shapes on the ground. 2 bodies lay curled together, almost covered by white. He moved fast. The moment his hands touched them, he understood. Not human. Their skin was soft blue, as if made from cold light. Silver hair fell across their faces. Their veins glowed faintly under the skin like stars in deep water. They were shaking, but not from fear alone. They were freezing. They were almost gone. He did not think about who they were. He did not think about danger. He did not think about rules or aliens or reason. He did what he always did when someone needed help. He acted. He lifted both bodies and carried them inside. They were light like empty coats. He placed them by the fire. He wrapped them in blankets. He lit another lamp. He boiled water. Calm hands, fast movements, a heart that worked before the mind could. The firelight touched their faces. They looked like sisters. One older, one younger, both thin and tired, as if the universe had been heavy to carry. Strange marks ran across their necks, like writing from a language no human book had ever held. The younger one's eyes opened first. They were violet, bright but tired. She looked at the fire, then at John, then at her sister. Her lips trembled like she was learning how to be alive again. She whispered one word. Not English. Not any language he knew. But he understood the meaning. Help. He nodded. You're safe. The older sister woke next. She moved slowly, placing her arm around the younger one. Even half frozen, she protected her first before herself. She stared at John for a long time, like she could see more than his face, like she could see his choices. He gave them warm water in small sips. He heated soup, and they shared it the way people share hope. They talked softly in their own tongue, words like wind over glass. They watched every movement in the small room like children seeing the world for the first time. Outside, the forest stayed silent. Inside, something new had begun. Hours passed, the storm weakened, the fire burned low. The sisters slept, wrapped together like they had learned the hard way never to let go. John finally stepped outside to get more wood. Then he saw it. The snow around his cabin glowed. Not bright, not burning, just soft blue light like slow breathing. Symbols were drawn in circles all around his home. Lines, stars, curves, and in the center, drawn in that same light, was a shape. A human. A man with a coat like his. A mark over the chest. He touched the glowing lines. They were warm. He turned. The older girl stood at the door, blanket over her shoulders. Snow touched her hair but melted before it stayed. "What is this?" he asked. She answered with calm eyes. "Protection mark." "From who?" he asked. She looked at the sky, and the sky answered. A deep sound rolled overhead. Not thunder. Engines. The snow began to shake with it. The forest was no longer silent. It was listening. The younger sister joined them and took John's hand with small cold fingers. The older one spoke again, in simple, broken English. "War comes." John looked up at the sky. He did not know yet who the enemy was. He only knew one thing. They had brought the war to the wrong human. The hunters in the sky. The first thing that changed was the sound of the sky. It was no longer only wind. It was no longer storm. It was something deeper, like metal moving inside a cloud. The trees did not sway, they listened. Even the snowflakes seemed to pause in the air for a second, unsure whether to fall. John did not know the names of alien ships. But his heart did. It beat faster on its own. He stood outside the cabin with the two alien sisters beside him. Reva watched the clouds like someone who had seen them open before. Zenari gripped John's sleeve with both hands, small and shaking, like she was trying not to disappear. A red light touched the forest. Thin at first. Then wider. It moved slowly across the trees, painting them in blood-colored glow. The snow turned red. The cabin turned red. Their faces turned red. The light was not just looking. It was searching. Reva spoke without looking away from the sky. "They found our trail." Zenari whispered almost to herself. "They always do." The clouds broke. Something dark pushed through them. Not like a plane, not like anything built by Earth. It looked like a blade made of night with engines that hummed instead of roared. Symbols glowed across its side. Cold, perfect, unfeeling. A hunter ship. John didn't move at first. He did not know what to do yet. Run, fight, hide, ask questions. The ship answered before he chose. A beam dropped from its belly and swept the snow slowly, like a giant eye opening. Reva grabbed John's hand. Her voice was steady, but her fingers were ice cold. Inside now. They rushed into the cabin and shut the door, but doors meant nothing against the sky. The red light washed through the window and walls, as if the wood was only a shadow. Zenari spoke in their own language. It was fast, sharp. She was afraid. Reva knelt by the table and pulled the rug aside. John stared. A wooden trapdoor. He had built it himself years ago, back when he thought his enemies were storms or thieves or bad men from his past. Not aliens, not hunters from the sky. Still, it was there, and it was ready. "Down," he said. Zenari did not argue. She moved first. Reva pushed her inside, then paused, looking straight at John. "If scan touch our bodies, they take us." "And if it does," he said. She met his eyes. "Then war waits." He helped her down and closed the trapdoor just as the red beam passed across the ceiling. The air inside the cabin buzzed like insects. Dust fell from the rafters. The ship above them spoke in a metallic voice that did not sound alive. "Lost subjects detected. Return, return, return." John did something simple. He ignored it. He stood very still and listened to the sound of his own breathing. It was strange how loud human lungs could be when silence felt dangerous. He did not lift his gun. He did not run. He only waited. Below the floor, Rivat opened her palm. A small round device glowed in her hand. Zenari whispered, "Shield pulse." The beam above them thickened. It grew brighter. It focused on the cabin like a finger pressing down on a map. A sharp click echoed through the boards as the scanner locked on target. Rivat closed her hand around the device. Blue light burst through the cracks of the floor. Not bright, not hot, just a soft, calm light like deep ocean. The scanner froze. It flickered. It lost them. Above, the ship changed tone. The engines gave off an angry hum like a creature that had lost a scent. Boots hit the snow. Heavy, many. The door shook. Something metal scraped across the wood. They were not only scanning now. They were searching. Rivat and Zenari listened from the dark bunker below. They had been here before, in other worlds, in other houses, hiding under other floors. This time was different. This time, someone stayed above to block the path. John. He stood between the trapdoor and the door of the cabin. No armor, no training for aliens, no plan strong enough. But he stood. The door creaked open. Cold air rushed inside. Snow blew across the floor. A tall shadow filled the doorway. The red visor of a helmet glowed. The figure stepped inside, slow and sure, like it already owned everything it walked on. It scanned the room again. The red light rolled over chairs, cups, blankets, fire. It stopped on the floor where John stood. For a moment, the world was only sound and light. Then the scanner blinked and failed. Blue shield pulse again. The hunter said something in a language John did not know, but he understood the tone. Annoyed. More soldiers entered the cabin. They searched shelves, lifted cushions, opened every door. They walked right over the trapdoor and never saw it. After a while, the sound changed again. Retreat. Boots left. The red beam pulled back. Engines rose. The sky swallowed the ship. Silence fell like snow. John opened the trapdoor. Two pairs of violet eyes looked up at him. Rivat climbed out first. Zenari followed, shaking from fear but trying to smile because he was there. "They didn't find you," John said. Rivat answered softly. "No, but they marked you now." "Marked me?" he asked. Zenari looked at him with sad, honest eyes. "They will not forget your cabin. They will not forget your face. You are part of this now." John looked at the burned footprints in the snow. He looked at the sky that no longer belonged only to clouds. He finally understood something simple. He had not just found two aliens in the snow. He had stepped into someone else's war. And he was already standing on the front line. The bond that should not exist. The night became different after the hunters left. The storm outside had stopped, but the storm inside had only begun. The cabin no longer felt like one man's quiet home. It felt like a place where choices mattered. The firelight moved across the wooden walls, and the shadows looked like they were listening. Rivat sat near the fire without speaking. Zenari wrapped both hands around a cup of warm water like it was something sacred. John stood by the window, watching the sky even though there was nothing there now. He finally asked the question that had been waiting in the air. "Why were they after you?" The sisters looked at each other first, not at him. They did not answer right away. They seemed to be deciding how much truth the human world could hold. Rivat spoke. "We were not born free." Zenari nodded slowly. "We were made to serve." The words were simple, but the silence after them was heavy. John did not push. He just waited. He had learned long ago that sometimes the best way to help someone speak was not talking. Rivat touched the marks on her neck. "These are not decorations. These are ownership signs. Zenari's voice shook, but she still spoke. We were taught one thing: obey, do not choose, do not dream. John felt anger rise in him, not loud anger, but deep and steady. He had seen people used before, different places, different reasons, same feeling. And you ran, he said. Rivan nodded. We ran because we saw something new, a sky without fences. They fell quiet again. The fire cracked. The snow on the roof slid and thumped softly. The cabin felt like the only warm point in a cold universe. Then something happened that John did not expect. Zenari stood up and walked toward the table. Her steps were slow, not from weakness but from meaning. Riva followed her. They opened a small cloth pouch John had never seen them carry. Inside were two objects. Small stones. One blue, one silver. Both glowed like they were holding a small piece of a star. They placed them gently on the table in front of him. John blinked. What are these? Riva looked at him the way someone looks at a door they hope will open. Bond stones. Zenari added, they are not for show, they are not for games, they are for life. He did not speak, he let them finish. Riva continued. In our culture, there is a rule older than the hunters and older than the camps. It says this: if someone gives you life when you were ready to lose it, then a thread forms. If that someone gives warmth not for reward, not for control, but only because it is right, the thread becomes a bond. Zenari touched her chest. That bond cannot be sold. Riva touched the stone. And it cannot be broken by force. John stared at the glowing objects. They did not just shine. They seemed to listen to him, like they were waiting for his answer before deciding how bright to be. He shook his head slowly. I didn't do anything special. I just helped two people in the snow. Riva smiled, but it was a sad smile. That is the rare part. Many see pain and walk away. Zenari looked down at the stones. On our world, a bond like this is almost gone. Hunters hate it, rulers fear it because it breaks control. John finally sat down. So what does this bond do? Riva thought for a moment and used simple words. It means this: we are not objects anymore. We are not lost property, we are people, and we chose. Zenari finished the sentence. We chose you. The cabin felt even smaller now, not from walls but from meaning. John did not move for a few seconds. He felt the weight of those simple words, and for once he had no joke, no fast reply. He spoke honest and slow. I don't own you. Riva nodded. Good, because bond is not about owning. It is about standing. If we fall, you stand. If you fall, we stand. Not because of law, because of choice. Zenari pushed one of the stones toward him with small, careful fingers. If hunters see this, they get angry. Why? He asked. Because it proves we are not theirs anymore, she said. The wind outside picked up again, not as a storm, but as if the forest was reacting to the conversation. The flames in the fireplace leaned sideways for a second, then settled. John looked at the stone. He could refuse. He knew it. They knew it. Riva said softly, if you say no, we will still thank you and go. We will not trap you in our fight. Zenari added, but if you say yes, you do not only help, you join. He thought of his quiet life: wood, coffee, snow, silence. He also thought of the red light scanning the cabin, the hunter's boots, the fear in two violet eyes, the marks on their necks that said property in a language he didn't know. He reached out. He did not hold the stone yet. He just touched it with one finger. It warmed instantly. The glow became stronger, like it had been waiting all along. Riva let out a slow breath. It has chosen. Zenari smiled, small and real. So have we. John closed his hand around the stone. Outside, far above clouds he could not see, Something electronic blinked red on a distant screen. A message was sent. 2 words. Bond confirmed. The hunters now had new orders. The war had changed shape. The woman who walked out of the sky. The snow stopped falling, but the clouds did not leave. They stayed low, heavy, like a roof pressing down on the forest. The trees were quiet again, but not from peace. They were quiet the way people are quiet in a hospital hallway, waiting for a door to open. John did not sleep that night. Reva and Zenari rested near the fire, but he stayed in the chair with the glowing Bond stone on the table beside him. It pulsed softly, like a second heartbeat that was not his but was now somehow connected to him. He felt it without touching it. Not magic. Not religion. Something simpler. A promise. Morning came without color, just pale light across white snow. John opened the door to get air and stopped before stepping out. The birds were back. But they weren't singing. They were hiding in the branches, wings pulled tight, staring at the sky as if they expected it to bite. John followed their gaze. The clouds split open. Not loud. Not violent. Just clean. A straight line cut through the clouds like someone had opened a giant curtain. From that line, something lowered slowly, without shaking the air, without roaring engines. A ship. Not like the hunter ship from before. This one was older in design but stronger in presence. Its surface looked like metal and bone woven together. Symbols crawled across it like living light. Reva appeared behind John. Her voice was almost a whisper. Enforcer class. Zenari stood beside her, eyes wide. She will not ask twice. She. That word mattered. The ship stopped above the clearing. No guns came out. No scanners dropped. A narrow beam of white light touched the snow in front of the cabin like a path being drawn. Someone walked out of the light. A tall woman. Not human. Her hair was white, braided down her back, and her eyes were gold like sunlight under ice. She wore no helmet. Her armor looked like it had grown on her body instead of being built for it. She walked across the snow without leaving footprints, like the world did not dare to record where she had stepped. She stopped a few meters from the cabin door and looked straight at John. She did not shout. She did not threaten. She spoke like someone who was used to being obeyed. Human, come outside. John stepped forward. He didn't take a weapon with him. He didn't feel braver than he was. He just knew running would be useless. He stopped in front of her. They looked at each other for a moment that felt longer than it was. She studied him, as if reading a book she had heard rumors about. You touched a forbidden bond, she said. John didn't deny it. They were freezing, he replied. That is not what I asked, she said. Reva and Zenari came out of the cabin and stood behind John. The gold-eyed woman turned her head slightly when she saw them, not surprised, not angry. Just measuring. Names, she said. Reva answered first, Reva. Zenari spoke, Zenari. The woman nodded once. I am Vales. I enforce the laws your hunters pretend to understand. John noticed something strange about her voice. It did not sound cruel, but it also did not sound gentle. It sounded like stone explaining gravity. Vales lifted her hand slightly. The marks on your neck show ownership. Reva's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent. The stones on your table show choice, Vales continued. Zenari stepped forward just a little. We chose. The wind touched the branches. Nothing else moved. Vales looked back at John. Do you understand what that means, human? He answered honestly. Not fully. It means, she said, you broke nothing they did. John blinked. He expected threat. He did not expect that. Reva and Zenari looked at each other in shock. They were used to being hunted for escape, not defended for it. Valles continued. Your kind is not common in our records. Humans are noted as emotional, stubborn, and unpredictable. She paused. But you gave warmth without asking their value. Her eyes softened for the first time, just a little. That is power where I come from. Zenari whispered, then we are safe. Valles did not answer at once. No one is safe yet. The sky answered her for her. Another light appeared in the clouds. Then another. And another. 3 black shapes cut through the gray, surrounding the enforcer's ship like wolves circling a lion. Their engines growled. Red symbols burned on their sides. Reclaimers. Hunters with law removed. The enforcer did not move. One of the ships opened a channel. A harsh voice filled the forest. Valles, step aside. Those units are property. The human is interference. Valles closed her eyes for one short breath. Then she said something simple. No. The air froze. Reva grabbed Zenari's hand. John understood the danger, even without alien politics. That one word was not small. It was a line. The 3 ships lowered weapons. Valles didn't draw hers. She didn't need to. She just looked at John again. Stay close to them. Whatever happens next, don't run unless I tell you. He nodded. Not because he trusted aliens automatically. Because he trusted how she stood. The reclaimers fired a warning shot past the cabin. Snow exploded in the distance. The sound shook the ground, but Valles still didn't move. Instead, she raised one hand and spoke calmly into the sky. You chased 2 girls because they chose. You call that order, I call it fear. There was no answer. Only weapons charging. John felt the bond stone on the table inside the cabin pulse harder. He felt something invisible wrap around him like heat without flame. Reva whispered, it began. Zenari finished the thought. The moment he touched the stone. Above them, lights powered up. Beside him, 2 alien sisters stood without shaking anymore. In front of them, a golden-eyed enforcer faced 3 ships alone. For the first time, John realized something. This was not just about rescue. This was not just about hunters and escape. This was the opening move of a much larger game. And the human in the cabin was no longer a bystander. He was the reason rules were breaking. The choice before the storm. The forest looked calm, but it was the wrong kind of calm. It was the kind of calm that comes before lightning hits the ground, before a wave breaks, before something loud happens that cannot be taken back. The snow shined in the pale light, untouched and perfect, as if the world did not want anyone to walk on it anymore. Inside the cabin, no one spoke for a long time. The enforcer's ship rested like a silver shadow above the trees. The reclaimer ship stayed farther back, dark shapes circling slowly, patient like predators that were not hungry yet, but would be soon. John stood at the table with the bond stone in his hand. He could feel it. Not heat. Not pain. Just presence. It felt like someone quietly saying, "You are not alone," without using a voice. Reva paced near the fire. She never used to pace. She had always moved with careful control, like every step was counted, but now the control was cracking. Zenari sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, eyes following the windows like she expected them to open by themselves. Finally, Reva spoke. Humans do not understand this kind of war. John looked up. What kind is it? She answered simply. One that starts inside the heart first. Zenari nodded. They don't only want bodies, they want our choices back. John walked to the shelf and pulled down a small metal box. Inside were tools, wires, old batteries, and parts from machines that barely worked anymore. Things he had saved because he hated throwing away something that might be useful later. Later had arrived. He spread the tools across the table and spoke without drama. "I don't plan to hand you over." Zenari looked shocked, almost hurt by how ordinary his voice sounded. "You say it like making tea," she whispered. John smiled a little. "If I say it like a speech, I'll scare myself." Reva stopped packing and watched him build. She saw something different in how his hands moved. Soldiers in their world moved like orders were inside their bones. John moved like someone who had taught himself to fix broken things because nobody else would. He wired small charges, non-lethal, light traps, flash bursts, noise bombs that confused the senses, nothing cruel, nothing bloody, just enough to buy time. He was not preparing to destroy. He was preparing to refuse. Zenari finally asked the question she had been holding. "Why do this for us?" He didn't look up from the wires. "Because somebody should have done it for you earlier." The room went quiet again. Sometimes the simplest answers are the heaviest. Outside, the enforcer Bailey stood in the snow, looking up at the circling ships. She spoke through a private channel no human ear could hear. "You pushed too far." A voice replied, harsh and certain. "You protect chaos." Bailey's answered calmly. "I protect choice." Back inside, John handed Reva a small device the size of a coin. "If things go bad, press this. It makes light, very bright. Close your eyes when you do." Reva closed her fingers around it like it was priceless. Zenari stood and walked toward John slowly. "We can still leave," she said. "We don't want your world to burn because of us." He finally looked up. "My world didn't start burning because of you," he said. "It was already burning. I just stopped pretending I couldn't see it." Reva watched him for a long second, then said quietly, with respect she didn't try to hide, "Humans are different from the files." John raised an eyebrow. "What do the files say?" She answered honestly. "They say humans are messy, loud, emotional, unstable." He chuckled. "Sounds accurate." Zenari shook her head. "They forgot one thing," she said. "What's that?" he asked. "They forgot that humans don't walk away." The bond stone pulsed once, strong enough that all three of them felt it. Reva turned toward the window. "They are coming closer." The reclaimers had changed formation, no longer circling, now aligning, straight, efficient, military. There was no message this time, no warning, no speech. Just movement. Bailey's lifted her chin slightly. "So be it," she said. John took a slow breath. He was not fearless. He was scared. But fear had direction now. He looked at the sisters. "Into the bunker when I say, not before." Reva held his gaze. For a moment, she looked older than she was, like someone who had carried fear for too many years. "We will listen," she said, "but not run." Zenari touched the mark on her neck. "I ran once, I won't again." The sky darkened as the ships descended. Snow rose in small clouds under their engines. Trees bent. The air hummed like a giant wire under tension. Bailey stepped forward, placing herself between the cabin and the ships. John thought for one strange second that she looked less like a soldier and more like a door that refused to open. A sharp voice came from the largest reclaimer ship. "Last call, release the marked units. Remove the human from interference. We will not repeat." Bailey's did not raise her weapon. She raised her hand. "No." There are small words that break large systems. That one did. Weapons armed. Energy lit the sky. Inside the cabin, the fire leaned backward from the force of the air. Glass rattled. The bond stone burned bright white. Zenari whispered one sentence in simple English she had learned only days ago. "It has begun." John nodded. Then we finish it right. And outside, under the heavy sky, the first shot was finally fired. When humans refused to break. The first blast did not hit the cabin. It hit the sky. Light spread across the clouds like a crack in glass. The sound came after, deep and slow, rolling through the snow and trees until even the ground seemed to listen. Birds flew up all at once, then vanished into the forest again. John did not run. He stood very still. It was strange, but the more noise the sky made, the quieter his thoughts became. He no longer wondered why him, or why here, or why now. Those questions were for peaceful days. This day needed different words. Like stand. Like protect. Riva and Zenari stood behind him. They were afraid. Anyone could see it in their eyes, but they were not the kind of afraid that makes people small. They were the kind of afraid that makes people hold tighter and stay. Above the clearing, the reclaimer ship spread out in a triangle. In the center floated the enforcer ship. Valles raised no shield. She simply watched. The reclaimers fired again, but this time the blast did not aim at the sky. It came down toward the snow in a slow, controlled arc, like a falling star that had made a bad decision. John moved at last. Not forward. Not backward. He stepped between the blast and the cabin, as if his body alone could matter in front of war machines. The bond stone burned bright in his hand. It pulsed so hard he almost dropped it. The blast never reached him. It broke apart midair, like water hitting invisible rock. Riva gasped. It recognized him. Zenari whispered. The bond woke. Valles finally spoke. Reclaimers, she said calmly, her voice moving across the clearing without shouting. Your law is old, but your fear is older. You shoot at what you don't control. The reclaimer commander appeared as a tall hologram above his ship. His face was hidden behind metal. His voice was not angry. It was sure. They are property. Valles shook her head once. They are people. He turned the hologram toward John. And the human. John answered himself before anyone else could. I'm the one who said no. The hologram froze for a moment, as if the word no was something unexpected from Earth. The commander spoke again, slower now. Human, do you understand what you stand against? John looked around at the snow, the cabin, the two sisters, the sky full of ships. Yes, he said, bigger bullies than usual. Zenari almost laughed and almost cried at the same time. Riva touched her lips like she was trying to hold in every emotion at once. The reclaimers fired again. This time not one blast. Many. Bright lines fell like rain made of fire. The forest shook. The air hummed so loud that it felt solid. John closed his hand around the bond stone and braced himself. The stones answered. Not with an explosion. Not with lightning. With warmth. A wide field spread out from John, soft and bright like sunrise through fog. The blasts touched it and dissolved harmlessly, fading into harmless sparks before reaching the ground. The commander finally sounded surprised. That should not exist. Valles' golden eyes narrowed. It exists because you forgot something, she said. What? He demanded. Valles looked at John, and at the two girls behind him, then said the simplest possible thing. He was kind. Silence fell after that. Not weak silence. Stunned silence. Riva stepped to John's left. Zenari to his right. They did not hide behind him anymore. They stood with him. The reclaimer commander's hologram brightened again. Then this becomes a higher matter, he said coldly. Not capture, erase. Behind him new weapons opened. Not small, not careful, designed for finishing, not warning, designed to end stories, not argue with them. Valles spoke one word into her ship. Now. The sky opened for the second time that day. Not with enemy ships. With something else. Something human. A massive dark shape slid out of the clouds, silent and heavy like a mountain that had learned how to float. It carried earth markings. It carried scars. It carried power that did not need to shout to be heard. A human warship. John stared up, shocked. "I didn't call anyone," he said quietly. Valey's did not look away from the reclaimers. "You didn't need to. Sometimes courage sends louder signals than radios." Human engines roared across the valley. Defense drones poured out like silver birds. Reclaimer ships shifted, suddenly less sure, suddenly outnumbered. The commander's hologram flickered. "This world is not part of this conflict." Valey's voice stayed calm. "It is now." The human ship spoke next. A captain with a steady voice. "This human and the bonded are under protection. Any act against them becomes an act against us." Snow fell again. Slow. Gentle. As if winter itself was exhaling. The reclaimer commander looked from John to Rivat to Zenari, to the giant human warship. Then he made the one choice people like him hate most. He left. The reclaimer ships pulled away, vanishing into cloud, shrinking until they were only memory. The sky began to heal around the holes they had burned into it. The battle ended. No victory music. No cheering. Just 3 people, and 1 enforcer standing in the snow, breathing. Rivat leaned her head lightly against John's shoulder. Zenari took his hand without asking. The bond stone softened its glow to something gentle again, like a heartbeat calming down after a run. John finally spoke, voice quiet. "So is it over?" Valey's looked at the sky that was already closing again. "No," she said, "it just stopped being small. Humans don't run." Snow covered the clearing again, hiding the marks of ships and battle, as if winter wanted to erase everything that happened. But the world had already changed. Erasing the snow would not erase the truth. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low. The room was quiet, but it was not the silence of loneliness anymore. It was the silence that comes after a storm when everyone checks that they are still here. John wrapped a bandage around his arm where metal had grazed him. It wasn't serious, but Zenari still watched every movement with worried eyes. Rivat added wood to the fire, her hand steady now. Fear had not disappeared. It had simply learned to stand. Valey stayed outside. She did not knock. She didn't need to. She stood in the snow like a statue that had decided to think about life for the first time. Her golden eyes followed the sky, but her thoughts were somewhere else. John stepped outside at last. He stood next to her without speaking. 2 figures in the snow, one human, one alien, both tired in the same way. Valey spoke first. "Most species break when pushed like this." John looked at the cabin window, where 2 violet glows watched them from inside. "Most people," he said quietly, "never had someone worth standing for." Valey studied him for a long moment. "You changed the path," she said. "Not just theirs, ours, mine." He frowned a little. "I didn't change anything." She almost smiled. "That is what people say right before history proves them wrong." The human warship still hovered far above the clouds, hidden now but not gone. It was not a threat. It was a promise. Someone had heard. Someone had decided that this story mattered. John turned back toward the cabin door. "I don't know how to do any of this," he admitted. "Aliens, laws, bonds." Valey's nodded. "Nobody knows at the start. That is why beginnings are dangerous." She walked away slowly toward the beam of light that waited for her. At the cabin door, Rivat and Zenari stood together, blankets around their shoulders. They looked small against the wide white world, but not lost anymore. Rivat spoke in simple English. "What happens now?" John could have said many things. He chose the truth. We live, we prepare, we don't bow. Zenari smiled, soft but real. We stay. He nodded. If you want to. They did not cry. They did not make dramatic speeches. They simply stepped forward and entered the cabin again, as if choosing a home was the most normal thing in the universe. Sometimes strength is not loud. Sometimes it is just staying. Vayli stopped before entering the beam and said one last thing without turning around. They will come again, not hunters, not reclaimers, something higher. They do not like humans who teach others how to choose. John answered without thinking too hard about it. Then they can stand in line. The beam took Vayli's away, and the sky closed behind her. Night came. The cabin glowed like a small star in a dark forest. The world outside was wide and cold, but inside there was soup, fire, blankets, and 3 lives that refused to be arranged by someone else. Ravad drew symbols in the air above the fire. Zenari listened to the old radio like it might suddenly tell jokes instead of static. John leaned back in his chair, tired in his bones but steady in his mind. He understood something at last. Humans do not become dangerous because they love war. They become dangerous because they love home. Because when someone tries to rip away choice, family, or simple peace by a fire, something ancient wakes up inside them. Something that does not care how big the ships are or how loud the threats sound. Humans don't run easily. And when they finally stand, others learn why messing with them is a bad move. The snow fell quietly through the night. Far away, unseen ships changed course. Records were rewritten. And somewhere in the dark between stars, a new warning began to spread. Do not push humans toward something they love. They will not step back. They will make the universe step back instead. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon for more amazing videos.